Welcome back to Whispers from the Wizarding World. Tonight's story takes us deep beneath the Wizarding World into places sealed, forgotten, and never meant to be opened. This is a tale about curiosity, duty, and the terrible cost of crossing lines that were drawn for a reason. As you listen, remember this: some locks exist not to keep us out, but to keep something in. Sit back, relax, and step carefully into tonight's story.
Thorne 2, The Cursebreaker's Last Assignment. Marcus. Thorne had been working as a cursebreaker for Gringotts Wizarding Bank for 15 years. He'd disarmed death traps in Egyptian tombs, unraveled complex enchantments on stolen artifacts, and survived encounters with cursed objects that would have killed lesser wizards. He was good at his job the best, some said, which was why the goblins had chosen him for the assignment in Vault 777. The vault had been sealed for over 2 centuries, its contents unknown, its renter long dead, without heirs. According to ancient Gringotts records, the vault had been leased by a wizard named Mordred Blackwood, paid in advance for 500 years. That advance was now halfway expired, and the goblins, always conscious of potentially valuable inventory, had decided it was time to investigate the vault's contents. Marcus descended deep into the caverns beneath Gringotts, past the usual high-security vaults, into regions where few wizards ever ventured. The cart rattled along tracks that hadn't been used in decades, the goblin driver maintaining an uncomfortable silence. They passed through caverns lit by phosphorescent fungi, over chasms that dropped into darkness that even magical light couldn't penetrate. Finally, they arrived at Vault 777. The door was different from other vault doors Marcus had seen, not metal, but what appeared to be solid black stone, inscribed with runes in a language he didn't recognize. No lock, no keyhole, just those strange ruins glowing with a faint, sickly green light. "The ruins are a warning," the goblin said, speaking for the first time. His voice was harsh, edged with something that might have been fear. "They say, what is locked here must remain locked. What is sealed here must stay sealed. Let the contents rest undisturbed until the world ends, for if they wake, the world will end with them." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Cheerful, "And we're opening this, why?" "The contract is clear," the goblin replied. "If the renter dies without heirs and the vault remains sealed beyond 250 years, Gringotts has the right to reclaim and liquidate the contents. We are merely following established procedures." "Right," Marcus muttered. "Procedures." He approached a door, wand in hand, and began his preliminary examination. The ruins weren't just warnings. They were part of an incredibly complex locking mechanism, one that had been designed by someone who understood magic at a level that Marcus could barely comprehend. He worked for 3 hours, carefully mapping the enchantments, looking for weaknesses or entry points. The goblin waited patiently, occasionally glancing nervously at the dark passages around them, as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Finally, Marcus found it a sequence of counter rooms that, when activated in the correct order, would temporarily neutralize the locking enchantment. He traced each rune with his wand, speaking the activation words in the ancient language of magical bindings. The runes flickered, dimmed, and then went dark. The stone door swung open silently, revealing darkness beyond. Marcus conjured light with his wand, and the illumination pushed back the shadows to reveal a chamber about 30 feet square. And in that chamber, floating in mid-air, was a sphere. It was perhaps 3 feet in diameter, made of what looked like obsidian, but with a surface that seemed to shift and move, like oil on water. Inside the sphere, Marcus could see something moving shadows within shadows. Shapes that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than human eyes could properly process. "What is that?" Marcus whispered. The goblin had not entered the vault. He remained outside, his face pale even by goblin standards. "I don't know. The records don't say. But I think we should seal this vault and leave. Immediately." Marcus wanted to agree. Every instinct was screaming at him to back away, to reseal the vault, to pretend they'd never opened it. But professional pride warred with survival instinct. He'd been hired to investigate and catalog the vault's contents. Running away without even determining what the object was would be a failure. And Marcus Thorne didn't fail. He stepped closer to the sphere, studying it carefully. The shadows inside seemed to press against the surface, as if trying to escape. And as Marcus watched, he realized the shadows had eyes, countless eyes, all of them fixing on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "It's a prison," Marcus said slowly. "Some kind of magical containment vessel. Whatever's inside wants out. Then we should ensure it stays inside," the goblin said firmly. "Close the vault. We're leaving." But Marcus made a mistake then, one he would regret for the rest of his life. He reached out with his wand, not to touch the sphere, but to cast a diagnostic spell, something that would tell him more about the nature of the enchantment containing the shadows. The moment his magic touched the sphere, everything went wrong. The sphere cracked. Not a large crack, just a hairline fracture, barely visible. But through that tiny crack, something escaped, a wisp of shadow, no larger than Marcus's finger, but moving with purpose and terrible speed. It shot across the vault and struck Marcus in the chest, passing through his protective enchantments as if they didn't exist. He felt it enter him, felt it burrowing into his magic, into his very essence. Cold spread through his body, and he heard voices, hundreds of them, thousands of them, all whispering at once in languages that predated human civilization. Marcus screamed. He tried to cast the shadow out, tried every banishment spell he knew. But it clung to him like a parasite, feeding on his magic, growing stronger as he grew weaker. The voices grew louder, and through them he began to understand what the sphere contained. It was a remnant of something ancient, something that had existed before wizards, before ones, perhaps before humans themselves. The early magical practitioners had encountered it, and, lacking the power to destroy it, had imprisoned it, sealing it away in hopes that it would eventually fade. But it hadn't faded. It had waited, patient and hungry, for any crack in its prison. The goblin was shouting something, backing away from the vault. Marcus wanted to call out, to warn him to run, to seal the vault with Marcus inside if necessary, but he couldn't speak. The shadow was spreading through him, taking control, and he could feel his own consciousness being pushed aside, compressed into a smaller and smaller space within his own skull. With his last shred of control, Marcus did the only thing he could. He turned his wand on himself and spoke the words of a spell that no curse breaker ever wanted to use. Tempus vinculum. It would lock him in a temporal stasis, freezing the shadow spread, but also trapping him in this moment for as long as the spell held. The world went still. Marcus was frozen, suspended between heartbeats, unable to move or speak, but still conscious, still aware. The shadow inside him was also frozen, unable to spread further, but also unable to be removed. The goblin, seeing what Marcus had done, made a decision. He reactivated the vault door's ruins, sealing Marcus inside along with the sphere and its remaining contents. Then he collapsed the tunnel leading to the vault, ensuring that no one could ever reach Vault 777 again without knowing exactly where it was and how to navigate past the cavern. Marcus remained there, frozen in time, trapped with the shadow inside him and the sphere of imprisoned darkness floating nearby. He was conscious but unable to move, unable to cast spells, unable to do anything but think. And in that frozen state, he could still hear the whispers, still feel the presence of the ancient thing that had tried to take him. Years passed in the outside world, but for Marcus, no time passed at all. He was locked in an eternal moment, aware but unable to act. The goblins never spoke of Vault 777, never mentioned what had happened to Marcus Thorne. They simply removed it from their active records, erased it from their maps, and pretended it had never existed. But in the deepest caverns beneath Gringotts, in a vault that no longer officially existed, Marcus Thorne remained. A curse breaker frozen in time, his body a prison for something that should never have been released. His consciousness trapped in an endless moment of horror and regret. Sometimes late at night, when the bank was closed and the caverns were quiet, the goblins on security duty would report hearing something from the deep tunnels. Sounds like whispering, like thousands of voices speaking in unison, calling out in languages that predated recorded history. The senior goblins would tell them it was just the sound of underground rivers, of wind through distant passages, of rocks settling in the ancient caverns. But the truth, which they all knew but none would speak, was that the thing in Vault 777 was still hungry.
Still waiting.
Still hoping for the day when someone else would be foolish enough to investigate the sealed chamber, to crack open the sphere just a little bit more, to give it another chance at freedom. And Marcus Thorne, frozen in his moment of desperate defense, remained the only barrier between that ancient hunger and the world above, a silent guardian who could not move, could not speak, could not even close his eyes against the nightmare he'd become part of.
Some stories don't end with escape. They end with containment. Tonight, we followed a man whose final act wasn't heroism or victory, but sacrifice. A single moment, frozen in time, holding back something that should never be free. In the wizarding world, not every guardian is remembered. Some are erased, sealed away, and left behind in silence. Thank you for listening to Whispers from the Wizarding World. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more dark tales from the archives. Until next time, some doors are locked for a reason.